Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, the president of Dale, Carnegie Training Tokyo, Japan. My special guest today is Hiroki Ishida, who is an old friend of mine, who is the president of BASF. Welcome, Ishida-san, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Yeah, well,
today.
Thank you. You know, we've tried to do this for some time now, but with COVID, it's been difficult to arrange.
That's true.
We finally made it happen, so thank you for your patience on that. And can you just tell us a bit of background? I mean, you are running a big company here in Japan. You've been with the company a long time. Tell us the backstory on how you got involved with BASF and how you came to become the president.
All right. I started my career at a BASF in Japan in 1994.
So you've been with the company all the way through.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, yes.
For a foreign multinational, that's pretty rare, actually.
That's true. That's true. So I directly joined the BASF as the new graduate and spent 3 years as a chemist. And then I got an offer to move to Germany headquarter as a research chemist. That was 1997, and it was so tough time for me.
So you're working in English and German as well?
No, only Germany.
Only German?
German.
Oh, no English?
Yeah, at that time BASF is still like a German giant company.
Right.
And rather than the international company.
Right.
And I just jumped into the headquarters, surrounded by super intelligent chemists. And I survived 1 year, but after that, I realized I cannot compete with them in terms of, research or chemist. And I changed my job to more like sales and marketing directions. That was first learning. I have to voice out, and I have to, not just simply following what the leader's saying. I have to emphasize, I have to speak up what I want. So then I changed my direction from a chemist to the sales and marketing, because Germany, the German chemical company is good for the R&D, but very terrible for marketing and how to sell the products. And where I see this is my strength, knowing the local country like Japan, knowing the people, and better to sell the product that created by the BASF. So that is my shift.
So when you were in Japan, when you started, you obviously, I guess you had Japanese bosses in Japan when you started.
Yeah.
And they would have been leaders who had a certain approach.
Yeah.
Then suddenly you're in Germany, you've got probably German bosses.
Yes.
Different approach.
Yeah.
What was different between the approaches?
The Japanese boss is saying, do this, do that. And the German boss never say anything. At that time, I was still 20s, like a 28, 9, and I'm follower, right? That is how I educated. But when moved to the Germany, never support me. Even the first day, I cannot get any PC because I didn't ask. So then that is also learning. I have to be more aggressive, asking the questions. If I'm uncertain, that is fast learning.
Yeah. Imagine it was tough. And so you spent how long in the sales and marketing role? How long were you doing that for?
Yeah, actually in Germany, so 1 year as a chemist, after the technical marketing, and also I experienced some commercial marketing. What I developed in the first 1 year as the chemist, and they tried to identify some patent and approach to the BASF Japan's, and my career started as a marketing and sales. Altogether, I was in Germany for 3 years.
So were you doing marketing sales to non-Japanese organizations at that time?
That's true, yes.
Were you selling to European, American?
Mainly for Germany.
Mainly for Germany?
Yeah.
So your German is probably not perfect yet.
Oh, terrible.
Must have been very hard to sell anything.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
can't speak the language well, right?
Yeah, but I very appreciate actually, because at that time, as I said, my boss said, you came to the headquarters of the BASF, and you have to speak only German. That is the most effective and efficient way to learn about Germany. So that's why 1 year I never speak any English.
Wow.
And the first 6 months particularly, I was alone. My wife was still working at, in Japan and have to settle herself. So I was alone for 6 months and only German. So 80% a day, I cannot understand what my colleagues saying.
Yeah.
But slowly, but surely, get used to it.
Didn't they give you any German language classes?
Yeah,
They
sure,
sent you
sure, sure.
German
We
language
got very intensive course.
Of course, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
bet.
yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah. I still remember Greg. So one funny story. After 1 week, the boss is asking me to come, had some get-to-know interviews. And he is asking, how old are you? In German. I answered, I don't have a car. Yeah, but get used to it.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And so, what happens after that first 3 years? What do they do with you then?
Yeah, and at that time, BASF Japan had one German delegate and the swapping. So I came back, and one German came back to Germany. So then I started like new business development. That is pretty fitting what I learned in Germany. So I came back to Japan, and I started some new product under the developing in Germany to introduce into the Japanese market.
So at that time, was there a German head of the organization in Japan? Was your boss at that time? Or?
At that time, no, still Japan side is a Japanese boss.
A Japanese boss.
Yeah.
Right? So now you've got to readjust back to the Japanese system.
Yeah.
Don't speak up. Be a follower, maybe.
Yeah, but if I remember back, so after returning from Germany, first half years, I would say my attitude is like still German, right? Like a little bit, this kind of attitudes.
Yep.
And sometimes my boss said, "Here is Japan, so you have to behave."
Sharpen up.
Yeah. So I'm flexibly adjusting, occasionally.
Right.
Yeah.
And so were you running any teams at that time in Japan?
No.
When did you start to run teams?
After 1 year, 1 year after I returned, I got a small team because my job, my task is getting successful. Mm-hmm. I'm creating a new business, and we needed some staff to boost these activities. So I got 2 or 3 subordinates.
So this was your first time to have subordinates.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was your thinking there? Were you thinking, okay, I'll be very Japanese with these people because we're in Japan? Or did you think, well, I want to encourage them to work in an international environment, help them to be ready for, a different type of approach as they go up in their career? How did you approach that?
Hybrid. It's, BASF is the German or global company, but still we are sitting in a typical Japanese market. So we need both, It's not extremely for German system, but it's not extremely the Japanese system, because internally, if I act as a Japanese, it doesn't work because the company itself is very international. So a hybrid is very important. Yeah.
And what did you find challenging about that first experience? Because, as a person who's doing sales marketing by yourself, you are in control of everything, right? And you work hard, you get the results. Then when you have people working for you, now you have to work through them.
Yeah.
They're maybe not as motivated as you, maybe not as experienced as you, maybe not as smart as you, or whatever, or motivated in a different way. How did you find, okay, I've got to get everyone together here on the same direction? How did you go about doing that?
So maybe you're talking about empowerment. Yeah. So until today, I'm same. It's not really of course, organization have to be respected. But my motto is, until today is get-togethers, a part of the team members. It's not like a boss and a subordinate. Work together equally. Sometimes my idea is better, but sometimes my colleague's idea is better. So let's encourage talk. I don't care organizational, hierarchies. I think, I don't know, this is good and bad, but until today, I try to do so.
So for those team members, I mean, Japan is a very hierarchical situation, the way the desks are laid out, where the boss sits, the whole thing is structured that way. So for your colleagues who are working for you, how did they think about that? That must have been a bit shocking for them to be treated that way.
No, Greg. Actually, BASF is existing in Japan more than 70 years today. So at that time, like more than 40 years. It's BASF Japan is also, compared to the typical Japanese company, we are rather flat and a rather international system.
Right, so they're used to it.
Yeah, it's used to it. So that was lucky.
So when you talked about getting people together, that's your motto, that's your style, it's engaging people. How did you go about, or what did you find worked well to really engage with people? What were some techniques or some methodologies you used to do that?
Respect, appreciate, fun together. I mean, it's not like, it's just enjoy working together. I think that is the most important.
How did you demonstrate the respect? How did you demonstrate the appreciation?
First of all, I try to be approachable. It's not like boss is sitting inside the room and very difficult to approach. No, I'm very open, equally, and I beyond the organizational hierarchical system. I always communicate beyond organizations.
The Japanese language has got, keigo, the very polite language, which is very finely calibrated around age, status, rank, male, female. It's not a flat language. It's it's a flat language in terms of, it's a monotone, but it's not a flat language in terms of hierarchy. So when you say that, I'm just wondering how did you approach that? Because the language itself, the way a boss would use the polite language to a subordinate, how a subordinate would speak to a boss would be different. Now, for example, I imagine, I don't know about Germany, but I'm guessing also a very hierarchical structure. I'm sure the German headquarters was, very hierarchical too. So how did you get around that language hierarchy?
That's a good question, actually. But maybe until today, I try to use, regardless younger or elders, I still, the word of keigo is a respective the language in Japanese. Of course, particularly for elder people, definitely for sure. But I had some subordinate who is elder than me.
Okay.
But still I use the, how we call the polite language.
And
cannot be rough, it's a very important.
So in terms of having fun together, how did that work? Is this a case of, taking everyone to the pub after work? Is it having a home party? Is it having, birthday parties for people in the office? I mean, what was the fun? How did you create the fun part?
Yeah, of course.
And I'm really interested for myself because one of my big weaknesses is I just work all the time and I forget about all that. So I've really got to study better how to be better with my team and having the fun part. So I'm looking for some guidance here.
Yeah, of course, like having drink together, so lunch together, dinner together. Yes, this is of course, yeah. But beyond that, enjoy working meaning for me, not the task given, taking the ownership, and then taking the responsibilities. Of course, responsibility means the accountability you should also take. It's not like a boss is saying like this, that's what I'm doing. No, positively and also taking the ownership, the job, create fun yourself. That kind of approach, I did it. Not like you do this until today or until tomorrow's without any understanding why I have to do. No. Explain properly why you need to do this, and then if you do this, what kind of the benefit you will get out of this task. This kind of communication, clear communication before starting, is very important.
So this sounds to me like you were doing a fair bit of delegation. You would delegate a task to someone, they'd be responsible for that task. You wouldn't be micromanaging them, giving, okay, you need to do this, like a typical, in a Japanese structure, that's very typical. The boss will tell you exactly what to do. Follow these steps, it'll be good. It sounds like you're empowering, as you say, you're encouraging, and you're delegating the responsibility. So did you have a delegation method that you used?
I don't know. It's I didn't, think very deeply, but give a framework, outline, first of all, clear visions. What is a objective to do? So explain properly, and the contents, how to reach there, is up to you. And if you are going to the wrong direction, give us some hint to adjust in the directions. But I still respect also the mistake as well. Going to the wrong direction, that is also, you have to learn from a failure and reflect yourself. Why? So this is what I learned, in the past. So my boss is, let me do whatever I like, and always going to the wrong direction. But I realize, better way is there. So I'm coming back to the right way. So I try to give such opportunity to the colleagues or to the.
Well, that's very interesting because Japan is the country of no mistakes, no defects, no errors. It's that type of mentality here, which is tremendous. So the flip side of that, though, is that when people make mistakes, there's no tolerance for the mistakes. And we teach leadership training, of course, and we talk about how to delegate. We have a system for that. We talk about how to handle mistakes. We have a system for that. And I remember one of the Japanese gentlemen was telling me, asking about how he handled mistakes. He said, when I was younger, my boss threw an ashtray at my head because I made a mistake. He was yelling at me and threw the ashtray right at my head. That's very, old style Japan, isn't it? So in your case, you are appreciative of people having the flexibility to try things their own way, and they may make mistakes. So how do you handle mistakes in the company? When mistakes are made, what do you do about it?
Of course, sometimes emotionally feel, because I'm asked by my boss, right? The target is there. If my colleagues made a mistake, it always, I cannot reach to the target as well. But before acting response, think first and then appreciate your mistake first. Artificially maybe, but still, it's great. You made a good mistake. It's at least I have to play the role, or I have to act my role. Originally, maybe I'm emotional a little bit, but in a working environment, I have to act as a leader. I think that always remind myself.
And, you set the tone here for everybody in the company, obviously, because you're at the top. So in terms of that, that may be your personal mentality and approach. What about the way you lead your direct reports? Do you also encourage them to see mistakes as a learning experience and to not throw ashtrays at people's heads or yell at them or get emotional? How do you permeate that idea through the company?
I think BASF has a culture to encourage mistake.
Is that coming from the R&D culture, do you think?
No, I think it's not only the R&D. Basically, BASF has such a culture. Yeah, that is lucky, right? Yeah, yeah. But particularly now, people try to avoid mistake. They are afraid
Yes.
afraid some mistake. Yeah, so that's why continuously I have to encourage, challenge, make a mistake, but reflection is very important. So this kind of culture still, my company here is not there 100%. They try to act within some boundary and then try not to beyond that. So that kind of cultures, until today, I have to change a little bit because particularly the world is going to the more uncertain.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what is correct, what is the answer. So you have to try.
Yeah.
So this comes to the diversity topics. If you don't have a diversified, inclusive organizations, you need a strong boss who has some opinion and then becomes a follower. The people becomes followers. So in the future, the VUCA era, we need a more, passionate, encouraging the mistake, bold ideas, this kind of the leaders, particularly in Japan, under these uncertain situations, we definitely need such a leader in the future.
It's interesting because I think for a lot of companies, they go the other direction where they start micromanaging everything, checking everything, no mistakes. It's a very uncertain world, uncertain future.
Yeah.
We better, really go internal on everything and control everything so we'll get through it. It's
But
interesting.
who knows the answer?
Yeah, good point.
Who knows the answers? Is the 60 or above years old boss has all the answers? They are fortune teller? No. I mean, maybe used to be, right? Until, let's say, Heisei or Showa, sure. But now we are Reiwa, and nobody knows what's happening. Who realized that? Who knows the corona to come? So how you manage the corona time? You don't have any answer. Try and errors, right?
So in that sense too, if you've got people feeling engaged, they care about the company, they think about the company, they're more likely to come up with innovation, creativity, ideas for the company. Yet in a lot of companies, not just Japan, but a lot of companies, that creativity is never able to be expressed or encouraged. Often it's suppressed. They don't feel my ideas are worth anything, no one cares. So the ideas stay sort of silent. What has been your experience with bringing ideas out and getting people to be creative? As you say, as a 60-year-old boss, maybe the 20-year-old person has got a better insight into technology or the direction of consumer demand or, where the trend is going than maybe at that age. So how do you foster innovation inside the company?
It's very difficult questions actually, particularly in Japan, because system itself or educational system itself in Japan is not educated like this. So to break this, there are steps definitely needed. I mean, some leaders say always, I appreciate your ideas. Please come up with ideas, but never come up. Because we have to link up with like a target agreement or artificially you have to provide some space for time to thinking only the creative things beyond the daily operational task. Because Japan, I mean, particularly BASF is a very task-oriented company. Target is very structured. You have to achieve this and that. So of course, people spend only how to achieve that. We need a little bit more, like hobbies, enjoy this environment, foster these bold ideas, and then the leaders, not only the top leaders, but the mid level leaders have to encourage and also appreciate these ideas. So why you are doing this? You have to do this and do that. Again, top-down approach doesn't work to create such an innovative, environment.
So do you have a brainstorming methodology in BASF? I worked with a big Japanese chemical company, I won't say the name, and working with their senior leaders. And I asked these guys, I said, what's your methodology for brainstorming, innovation? They said, well, we don't have one. I couldn't believe it. I said, but you guys, you're doing, research all the time. You're scientists, you're creating new materials. Amazing. How could that be? I said, well, no, we don't have any structure. Because we had a structure that we would teach people how to do innovation. And I thought, well, this will be pointless for these gentlemen, because mainly gentlemen, actually no ladies in that case. It'll be pointless for these gentlemen because they must have a better one, I thought. They didn't have anything. I was like, wow, okay. So when I taught them this structure, they were like, oh, this is great, we can use that. I was so surprised. But I'm wondering about BASF, you're coming from a European headquarters, maybe more of a global view on things. What's your way of generating ideas through brainstorming? Do you have a system for that?
It's first of all very important long-term view. It's not short-term. The Japanese is very short-term. Yeah, customer need this, let's create. But is that the customer's request is a long-term successful? Nobody knows. Yeah, so we have to think about long-term and what is the mega trend? Coming in futures. Based on that, we have to break down into what you need daily. So this kind of methodologies maybe is needed. By the way, the German company used to be very successful industrial countries, and they sometimes forget to see outside of the countries. So it's a BASF also changing. And one particular change is more customer-driven. It's not like your own portfolio-driven. Understand the customers, understand the industry long-term. So this, repeatedly we have to talk to the colleagues. Is that happening in the 10 years? Is BASF is existing in 20 years? Nobody knows. So think about more long-term. That should be the basis of the creating innovations. And once again, I said, and encourage and foster the bold ideas. Yeah.
So in practical terms, like for example, when I worked in previous companies, the innovation methodology was my boss have all the direct reports in the room, all the section heads, grabs the whiteboard marker, okay, ideas, here's a problem, give us some ideas. So someone would say an idea, he'd say, oh, that's a stupid idea, give me another one. Someone would give an oh, we did that, didn't work, next idea. After about 3 times, everyone's silent, no one wants to say anything. And I was watching this thinking, this cannot be the best way to do this, this is not working. But he was ex-military in his case, right? So maybe that's how he worked in the military. Certainly didn't work in an organization. If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? by Japan Business Mastery now.
My delegations in Germany, I came back to Japan. I had some experience, the differences between Germany and the Japanese system. And 3 years later, I moved to the Malaysia.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Again, totally different.
Yeah, this is interesting. You total German immersion basically in Europe, back to Japan as mainly Japanese. Now, where did the English come in here? Because I don't think you were probably using much English when you're in the headquarters. So was this where you started to learn English? Where did you start? Because your English is excellent. So where did you start to pick up on English?
So my English came from the first 3 years when I was still Japan before going to Germany.
Okay.
Because
Was the language in Japan was English in the company?
Yeah, at that time, training, is a BASF Japan provided many English training, particularly new grad.
Right.
I was terrible in English, but I picked up very quickly for the first 3 years.
Right.
Then switched to the German.
Yeah.
And when came back to the Japan, I mix up always German and the English.
Yeah.
But after 3 months later, I switched back to the English.
English, right. So Malaysia again, very different country, different culture. You've got a lot of different things going on there between the Chinese component, the local component. You've got Muslim as a religion, quite different. So, what was your experience in leading in Malaysia?
Yeah, my job was at that time that my mission is that at that time, Japanese company putting a lot of the production in ASEAN countries, particularly like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam's, and also Singapore. And the BASF, as a German company, is very tough to open the doors of the customers. Because Japanese likes to work with Japanese. As a raw material supplier, BASF is very difficult to get into the business. So my boss said, you used to be Germany, you have some international understanding. Next assignment, please go to the ASEAN countries. And wherever you like, you can stay. So, and I just pick up in Malaysia, but my responsibility, the 6 ASEAN countries, is more complex actually.
So are you playing the presidential role in Malaysia?
No, senior manager role.
Senior manager covering multiple countries?
Yes.
Right.
And the head of the sales as a senior manager.
Right, so you've got salespeople in all these, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia,
Philippines,
the works. That must have been very exciting.
So then, beginning stage, I'm confident because I was somehow successful last couple of years at the BASF, and I tried to force what I did it, and it completely failed.
Yeah.
Because, this is also the culture difference. Not like a Japanese boss saying this, followers comes. No. I have to properly explain whys and also try to understand the background why they are working at the BASF in Malaysia or Thailand. Is that more money or is that more, it's a totally different. The Japanese just joining the company and the subordinates understand if the boss say this, I have to follow, right? But they are different. Some of the colleagues hate, boss and then they leave the company. So I have to manage all this, totally different culture background and peoples. And what I did it is be local. Not like behaving as a Japanese or international people.
But be local. Indonesian, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, all totally different. Singapore different, Malaysia different. Be local. That means be 6 locals, right?
Yeah, of course, I cannot be local 100%. Listening, communicate, try to adapt, even I feel this is not effective or not efficient. But that is the local. Try to eat together as a local food, not Japanese food. Communicate, be the part of the team members, and they trust me. I spend 1 year. I spent 1 year, try to be local peoples, and they start talking to me. Maybe because of some trustful relation is there for 1 year. Then, I still remember very good time, 3 years being in Malaysia. Learn a lot of things, learn the local language, taxi language, but still Cantonese, Bahasas, all this, try to manage. So they appreciate, and they also start saying, are you really Japanese? Looks not Japanese also. So, and I was fantastic. I had a fantastic time. So during my delegation in Malaysia, I also learned I have to understand others. I have to be other side of thinking. This kind of learning is creating my D&I importance. I truly, from a bottom of heart, diversity and inclusion is very important. So not just simply top down, but understand subordinates. So that is what I learned.
One thing I noticed too for us, we have Dale Carnegie's all through APAC. Well, we're everywhere, but we're all through APAC, and we have conventions for regional conventions. Last one was in Phuket in Thailand, and we've been previously in different countries. And whenever I go to these conventions, I'm always struck by the energy, the hunger, And Japan's like, everyone's had a big lunch, and they're calming down for the afternoon. They're not hungry, but there they are hungry. And you feel the energy, you feel the hunger. It's like, wow, it's so refreshing. And I found that was like, so different from Japan, And when I take my Japanese team members with me to these conventions, they feel it too. Like, oh, wow, these people are so energized. They're so bold. They want to really push out, It's quite a different energy, isn't it? So, but you also went to Malaysia. You also went to Hong Kong as well, I think.
Yes.
So was that directly from Malaysia you went to Hong Kong?
Directly from Malaysia.
So again, that's different again. Hong Kong's totally different again.
Yeah.
So were you running Hong Kong at that time, or you had the similar role, or?
No, I joined the regional headquarter, based in Hong Kong, managing APAC.
APAC entirely.
For particular portfolio.
Okay, right.
So my subordinates is international.
Right.
And the headquarter in Hong Kong at BASF is a multinational. It's not maybe small portion of the Hong Kong local, but others is, I don't know, I had more than 10 nationality underneath. So again, but they are much more aggressive because they are selected, the people. They have to appeal. So I have to also manage all these aggressive non-Japanese nationalities.
How did that go? What did you find worked well for you doing that?
I try to be task-oriented. It's not emotional basis. And this is number one. And they try to low context. I mean, Japanese sometimes very high context, right? So try to be clear and what we need to achieve. This kind of communication, normally Japanese is very bad. But this is what I learned for the last couple of years. So I try to be, very clear. And as I said, not emotional. Then what else? Be positive, always positive. And that they want to grow in a human life. It's not for company, but they want to grow yourself. So that's why I always communicate what you want to achieve, what is the next career you want. So this kind of communication, so-called like, how we call this, the feedback, reviewing your careers. I spend a lot of time to talk about that.
Which is interesting because often in Japan, that's not really a feature of how, because you're in the company, you know every couple of years they're going to move you somewhere around the company and you'll be with the company for life for most big companies anyway. Smaller companies different, but you know where you're going to be. So that sort of where do you want to be is an irrelevant question because you don't know where you're going to be because in 3 years' time you go from, heavy export, machinery export boss to head of HR, and then you go to audit or something like that, totally unrelated task. So that's a very different way of managing, isn't it? Yeah. And so how long were you in Hong Kong?
4 years, almost 4 years. Yeah. So at that time I did it a lot of organizational setup. But during that time, BASF acquired a lot of company.
Right.
Them coming a new DNA into the organizations.
Okay.
And I have to set up the best team out of those acquired company, traditional BASF, and mid-hire. So it's an organization, diverse organization to set up, respect all these cultures into the one team. That is my most, this is my missions. So I spend a lot of time.
How did you, that's a good question about building a culture. When I was working for Shinsei Bank, we had a lot of mid-career hires came in. We had foreigners, we had Japanese. And the original group from the long-term credit bank group actually became the minority. And all of these imports were the majority, who've all brought their own culture with them from where they worked before. And I realized one day when the balance had tipped, I realized, we don't have any central culture anymore because the majority culture is not one culture anymore. It's mixed culture.
Yeah.
And that's why at that time I set about really creating the Shinsei dream and the Shinsei culture, really worked hard on that to make that happen. So we have one culture. So I have a big experience of doing that. How did you go about getting that culture to unify with all of this acquisition and different DNA and different people, different background, different perspectives, different expectations? How did you meld all that together?
I think it's all together joining the discussion and the they belonging to their team and create where we want to achieve, where we want to go together. It's not good and bad, right? It's diversity there, but inclusive culture is important. This inclusive culture for me is jointly creating together, establishing together. So I spend a lot of time inviting all these different, background people for the discussions and respect their strengths, and put together. So that is where we want to achieve together. You are the part of a team. Please support us to create such a culture together. That kind of process is maybe important.
And this is like town halls, or is it one-on-one, or combination? How did you do that?
Combinations. The town hall communication from the top is also important, but at the end of the day, some task team have to
so
do the
these are
job.
small teams
Yes.
rather than one-on-one. It's small
Yes.
teams.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, that culture build is a very, very critical thing. And so then you go back to Japan after that?
Yeah, at that time, already like more than 8 years, I was outside of Japan, right? And I was never asked to come back, so maybe BASF headquarter in Japan is forget me, right? And I was already totally adapted into the international cultures. At that time, both said, you have two choice now. You stay longer time and managing the regional job, or you go back to Japan to manage corporate, right? So, and then my family settle everything, education, all this stuff, I can stay in Hong Kong. And because I reached already like a 2010 time, I was already vice president level in a regional job. That is the first Japanese reach to the vice president
Oh,
outside.
Congratulations. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, so I have to be role model of our colleagues in Japan. Maybe I have to make a more career outside Japan. That could be also my role for BASF in Japan.
And that's not such a common thing because, I often think about five-star hotels. When I travel, and I stay at these five-star hotels with work or pleasure, I never meet a Japanese GM.
That's true.
Never. I know they're out there. I know they do exist. But the numbers are tiny because they want to stay in Japan and they don't want to go outside. They want to run the hotel in Japan. So that's right. Someone from Japan who's actually transportable for the company is not so common. You're a pathfinder there, that's for certain.
Yeah, maybe I was lucky. My boss was a more D&I, hosting the D&I. That could be. But one thing what I learned from Germany time, as I said, what is a strength of mine to identify is very important. I cannot copy and paste competing with a German or Indian or Chinese. I'm Japanese. What is the strength? What the hero can do? I realize knowing the customers, knowing the industry is a little bit missing part of the headquarter. Headquarter is more logical, strategic, on the papers, but the executions is a strength of the Japanese, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe Japanese is not good for the strategic or long term, but execution is very good. So I use these strengths in a regional function. So they value me. Oh, the countries, Malaysia also India Japan or Korea. I'm very closer to the countries. So that is a variable for developing also the strategies or long-term view. So that could be one of the reasons that I got such opportunities. So I'm ready to stay. However, all of a sudden, the BASF Japan organization changed. So at that time the president retires, and they are looking for some new stuff. And I got suddenly I got some offer, and I talked to my wife and what to do. Both is possible. After 8 years, why not? Let's go back to Japan. Yeah. So and then I decided to come back to Japan in 2012.
So in that case, there's a couple of things here. One is you've been out of Japan for a long time, right? And when you were in Japan, you were not the boss.
No.
So suddenly you turn up. Oh, he's back, if they remembered you. And he's now the boss, right? Yeah. So how did that feel to come back into the Japanese organization here to reestablish yourself and to build the connections and the trust and get people to follow you? Because, in a lot of ways, Japanese who spend a lot of time outside of Japan are not necessarily regarded in a positive way because they think, they've become too Western. They're not really Japanese anymore. I can't relate to them anymore. Their expectations seem to be, a bit different, not how I like it. How did you find that coming back? How was the reverse culture shock this time?
Yeah. First of all, have to be humble, have to be open, as I repeating again, have to be approachable, and bringing something which Japanese doesn't know. So I spend the time outside Japan, a lot of things which I have, which is not having by the local colleagues. So the colleagues in Japan have to value me, have to learn from me. If not, they just simply say, why this guy is sitting here? It's no value, right? So it's try to bring something. So bringing something, you have to get something always, and then output. Input, output, input, output. And also not forget, I'm Japanese, so behavior point of views and all these characters. So again, the hybrid. So of course, it took a little bit time, but so far I'm very successfully, smoothly back into the organization, I would say. Yeah.
And could you bring things that worked outside of Japan, as you said before, that relationship building, trying to get people to think about what they want? Were you able to bring that into the organization here when you came back to Japan?
Yeah. Particularly like if you sit in a local country, a lot of things is uncertain. What's happening in a regional role? What global people is saying? Networking. Sometimes the Japanese organization cannot solve the issues themselves, but I can support because I connected to the entire. So this kind of the value I can bring. Yeah, that is some essence that be successful back into the organizations. Yeah.
So if we were thinking about someone who's sitting outside Japan, they don't know Japan, they don't speak the language, and they're going to be sent to Japan. Okay, your next job is go and run the organization in Japan, right? If you're going to give that person some advice on how to be successful when they get to Japan, what would that advice be?
I think it's first of all, understand and respect deep-rooted culture. Sometimes, based on my experience, Japanese doesn't say anything. Japanese so quiet. Why? Maybe no thinking. Just follow us. It's very negatively said, right? But could be in the international environment a little bit negative, but there are a couple of the reasons behind, right? Because of education, so harmonization, all this stuff, good and bad. So first of all, you have to respect and understand and respect those cultures that are different from Western cultures. However, not necessary for you to adapt it. Be yourself. Why company sending you into the organization? Because most probably because of change the culture, right? So I always say you should understand the Japanese culture, which is complicated a little bit. You should understand the customers. Maybe you hate so tiny thing. Is Japanese giving the question so many customer this and that, right? But I have to respect first. But to change the cultures, you have to behave yourself, hybrid type, understand first, but you have to say what is your missions and then communicate to the customers. Only this process is bringing the successful culture transformations. If you 100% be Japanese, even you are a foreigner, then why company send the foreigners? Japanese there.
Plenty of Japanese here already, right?
So I always say respect, understand, communicate, but be yourself.
Should they learn Japanese language?
In a Japanese, like BASF, like an international company, not necessarily, but a small, tiny word, always appreciated by the local, right? Konnichiwa, oishii,
Wakarimasen.
Wakarimasen.
Very useful word.
Yeah. Few words, as I learn in a Bahasa or Cantonese, you can make relationship closer. So I advise basic things, but flip side of a coin is that local organization need also international transformations. So you are the English speaker, you speak English, they have to get used to it. So hybrid is also important.
Important. And what's your definition of leadership?
Yeah, inspiring to the others, and the make speedy decisions, particularly uncertain environment. And also, yeah, that too is it's always I'm targeting, and the and the more communicators positively, and the reflecting others, and happy to say I made a mistake. It's open, because leader have to be trusted. Based on the trust, particularly Japanese environment, things moving. So that is my objective. So that leaders, I really want to have a little bit it's more such a leaders in the organizations. Positive, passions, approachable, open, and inspiring. That is my all about leaders.
Well, that sounds like an excellent combination of skills to have. And on that note, let's pull it up there. But thank you very much, Ishida-san. It's a
Thank you.
fascinating journey you've had through your leadership and your career so far. And congratulations on being the first to actually go outside of Japan and be a leader outside of Japan. I think that's terrific. And a good role model for, Japan's buying up a lot of companies outside of Japan because of the declining population and the customer base here. So those sorts of capabilities are going to become much more important in the future. So you're a good role model for many people. I hope they get a chance to watch this video and learn from you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg.
So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.